They were already stepping off the barge when the first man fell. No one stopped him. He slid into the mud, face down, hands still clutching the sack of flour he had been issued minutes earlier. The guard shouted for the line to keep moving. Boots pressed past his shoulders. Someone laughed, short and dry. The river kept flowing. Nazino Island did not begin with arrival. It began with movement being denied. The Tom River was wide and cold, and the bank offered nothing that resembled a shore. No docks, no shelters, just raw ground, trampled flat by the weight of people who did not belong there. Over 6,000 were unloaded in a single stretch of daylight. Men, women, teenagers, the old, the sick, all carrying the same thing. A small ration of flour, no tools, no firewood, no instructions. They were told this place was temporary. No one explained how to live here. The first night, they slept standing, because lying down meant not getting back up. Bodies pressed together, breath shared. The flour sacks were hugged like children. It rained. The island drank it in. By morning, the first deaths had already occurred, but no one counted yet. Nazino had no buildings, no fences, no marked graves, only armed men at the perimeter, and rules that were never spoken, only enforced. Anyone who tried to swim was shot. Anyone who stepped out of line was beaten. Anyone who collapsed was left. The flour was useless without water or heat. People mixed it with river water using their hands, swallowing the paste raw. It clogged throats. It hardened in stomachs. Dysentery followed quickly. So did weakness. So did silence. By the second day, names stopped mattering. People became positions, a body at the edge of the group, a shape that no longer moved, someone who used to speak. The guards were not surprised. They had been warned about shortages, not outcomes. Their orders were simple: contain, prevent escape, keep records minimal. That was when the first bonfire was lit. At first, it was built from driftwood and torn clothing, a flame against the cold. People crowded around it, hands outstretched, eyes hollow. The fire gave nothing but smoke. There was no food to cook. By nightfall, the fire had a second purpose. It happened quietly. A man disappeared from the outer ring. No struggle, no screams, just absence. By morning, someone noticed his boots were gone. Then his coat. Then the shape that had been beside him in the dark was no longer there. The guards pretended not to see. Hunger does not announce itself. It narrows the world. It strips the future. It makes the body speak louder than memory. By the third day, the flour was gone. Some tried to ration it. Some had it stolen. Some lost it when they fell. The river carried white streaks from spilled sacks, dissolving into nothing. People knelt to scrape the wet earth where flour had touched, licking mud from their fingers. A woman tore the lining from her coat and boiled it in river water over the fire. She shared it with her daughter. The daughter died anyway. That night, the bonfire burned longer. The smell was noticed first, not by everyone. Only those who had worked with meat before, those who knew what fat did when it met flame. They did not speak. In the dark, shapes moved toward the fire and did not return. By morning, bones were visible in the ash. No one asked where the meat came from. The guards filed a report about disorder. They mentioned theft. They mentioned fights. They did not mention cooking. Nazino was never meant to be a settlement. It was meant to be a pause, a place to put people while the system decided what to do with them. Former prisoners, so-called social parasites, people without documents, people without a category. The island solved the problem by erasing it. On the fourth day, violence became efficient. Those who still had strength formed groups. They controlled space around fires. They chose who stood close and who did not. Weakness became visible. Injury became an invitation. A man with a cut did not survive the night. People stopped helping strangers. A boy watched his father dragged away. He did not follow. He learned. The guards noticed the fires growing brighter. They noticed fewer complaints, fewer attempts to swim. Order, in its way, had returned. They delivered another shipment of flour. It arrived too late. People fought over it with hands that no longer shook. A man was killed for a sack that burst open in the struggle. The flour scattered. No one tried to gather it. They were already looking at something else. By the end of the first week, Nazino had changed its rules. Death was no longer random. People were selected. A woman with gold teeth was targeted first. Her mouth was pried open while she was alive. The teeth were taken before the rest. A man with strong legs was followed until he slept. A group waited. They learned not to kill quickly. Blood wasted meat. Children disappeared faster. Not all at once. One here, one there. A space left empty by morning. Parents were told they had wandered. Parents stopped asking. The river carried scraps downstream. Local villagers found bones caught in their nets. They reported it. The reports were dismissed as animal remains. The paperwork ended there. On Nazino, the dead were not buried. They were dismantled. Fingers were removed for rings. Skin was cut away from boots. Hair was burned. Nothing was wasted. Hunger had taught them efficiency. Some refused. They starved instead. Their bodies fed others. The guards began to rotate shifts more often. Some requested transfers. Others adapted. One guard traded favors for meat. He did not write that down. A doctor was sent briefly. He wrote a report about disease and malnutrition. He mentioned cannibalism once, as a possibility. The word was crossed out. The island did not need witnesses. It needed silence. By the second week, fewer than half remained alive. Those who survived had changed posture. They stood apart. They watched hands. They avoided eye contact. Trust had become a liability. A man carved marks into a stick to count days. He stopped when the stick was taken from him and used as a weapon. The fires burned every night now. They were not hidden. There was no point. The smoke rose straight into the sky. The smell traveled. No one came. When storms came, people died faster. Wet clothing killed warmth. Wet fires killed hope. The strongest took shelter beneath bodies. Records from this period are incomplete. Names vanish. Numbers blur. What remains are fragments. A note about excess mortality. A line about unforeseen complications. A margin comment questioning logistics. No one wrote about the boy who stopped speaking. No one recorded the woman who hid a knife and used it only once. By the third week, Nazino had almost finished its work. Those still alive were skeletal, dangerous, experienced. They had learned which parts of the body lasted longest, which burned cleanest, which tasted least like despair. When evacuation finally came, it was abrupt. Boats arrived without warning. Orders were shouted. Survivors were herded. The island was left as it was. No cleanup, no memorial, just ash and bone pressed into the soil. Out of thousands, fewer than 2,000 left alive. Many died later. They carried Nazino inside them, in their sleep, in their silence, in the way they watched food. Some tried to speak. Their stories were filed away, classified, buried under language that softened edges and removed blame. The island was renamed in reports. The deaths became numbers. Nazino returned to quiet. Grass grew where fires had been. The river kept moving. The question that remained was never asked aloud. Not how it happened, but how quickly it became normal. After the boats pulled away, Nazino did not end. It emptied. The river erased footprints within hours. Rain pressed ash into the soil. What remained could not be counted easily. Bones without order, fire pits without meaning. A place that no longer looked like a crime, only abandonment. Officials described the evacuation as a correction. They did not describe what had required correcting. The survivors were divided and moved inland. Smaller groups, remote settlements, places where questions died quickly. They arrived thin, silent, and dangerous in ways no inspection could measure. Doctors weighed them, clerks counted them. No one asked what they had eaten. Some survivors could not touch flour again. Others could not stop hoarding it. Bread became an object of fear. A man hid crusts under his bed until mold consumed them. A woman refused cooked meat for the rest of her life, but chewed leather without hesitation. The island followed them. At night, many woke choking, certain they smelled smoke. Some refused fires altogether, even in winter. Cold felt safer than warmth that reminded them of light on flesh. A few talked. They did not use the word cannibal. They spoke about groups, about protection, about how weakness moved from one body to another, about how hunger taught patience, about how killing was rarely sudden. Their accounts were inconsistent in detail, but identical in outcome. The state noticed. An internal inquiry was opened months later, quietly, after rumors reached Moscow through channels that did not usually carry rumors. The language of the investigation was careful. It focused on logistics, not decisions, on supply chains, not intent. The island was referred to as a special settlement failure. Failure implied accident. The investigator assigned was methodical. He visited the region. He spoke to guards. He spoke to villagers downstream. He listened longer than expected. Villagers described bones in nets, children's bones, human bones with knife marks. They described dogs refusing to eat what washed ashore. The investigator wrote this down. Then, he rewrote it. Words were softened. Specifics were removed. Cannibalism became extreme survival responses. Murder became internal conflict. Responsibility blurred into process. Still, the report was too heavy. It reached higher desks than intended. Orders came back quickly. Copies were reduced. Distribution was limited. Conclusions were adjusted. The cause was hunger. The solution was improved planning. The lesson was not to repeat mistakes, not to question the system that made them possible. The island was declared unsuitable for settlement. That was the official ending. Unofficially, Nazino became a problem of memory. Survivors were discouraged from speaking, not by threat, but by futility. Complaints went unanswered. Testimonies disappeared into files that no one accessed. Some survivors were arrested later for unrelated charges. Their past followed them only as rumor. A few were labeled unstable. Trauma was an inconvenience. In villages near the river, stories persisted. Parents warned children not to swim near the island. Fishermen avoided certain bends where nets came up heavy with things that should not be there. The name Nazino was spoken quietly, then less often. Silence worked slowly. Years passed. The political climate changed its language but not its habits. New crises demanded attention. Old ones were archived. The files on Nazino were sealed, not because they were unique, but because they were representative. The state did not fear the story. It feared the pattern. Nazino showed how quickly categories dissolved: prisoner, guard, civilian, victim, provider, predator. Under pressure, roles rotated, authority thinned. Hunger decided faster than ideology. This was not useful knowledge. During later decades, some historians stumbled onto fragments. A paragraph here, a footnote there, a survivor's name without context. They requested access. They were told the materials were incomplete or lost. Some persisted. One historian tracked down a former guard, old, sick, willing to talk if no recorder was used. The guard described the smell, the quiet, how order returned once fear shifted direction. He said the worst part was not the killing. It was how reasonable it felt. The historian wrote this down later from memory. He debated including it. He knew how it sounded. He included it anyway. The article was published in a small journal. It circulated slowly. Academics debated numbers. They argued terminology. They questioned sources. The argument missed the point. Nazino was not an outlier. It was a compression. It took processes that usually unfolded over years and forced them into weeks. Removal, dehumanization, scarcity, permission, adaptation, normalization. The island did not invent cannibalism. It removed obstacles. Survivors aged. Some built families. Some avoided them. Many never spoke of the island to their children. Others warned them indirectly. Never trust abundance. Never assume help is coming. Never believe rules will protect you when food is gone. One man kept a list of names in his head. He recited it silently when he could not sleep. When age began to erase details, he panicked. Forgetting felt like betrayal. He died without writing anything down. The ground on Nazino still holds fragments. Occasionally, erosion reveals bone. Locals rebury them without ceremony. Digging invites questions. Questions invite attention. Attention invites nothing good. There is no monument, no plaque, no official apology. The absence is deliberate. Nazino exists best as rumor, because rumor does not demand responsibility. It floats. It fades. It can be dismissed as exaggeration or wartime chaos, or exaggeration, repeated until belief weakens. But records exist. They are incomplete, edited, cautious. They are enough. What they show is not just death, but speed. How quickly people learned. How quickly lines moved. How quickly the unthinkable became routine labor. How quickly moral language collapsed into task language. Cook, guard, select, dispose. No ideology was needed once hunger took control. This is why Nazino is uncomfortable. It does not require monsters. It requires administration. The final report concluded that with proper preparation, the tragedy could have been avoided. This was technically true. It was also irrelevant. Preparation assumes concern. Nazino was a holding action, a place to put excess humans while decisions were delayed. No one expected it to succeed. They expected it to disappear quietly. It almost did. Only fragments resisted. Bones in nets. Smell in memory. Survivors who flinched at firelight. Decades later, access improved slightly. More files surfaced. Numbers were revised upward, then down again. Certainty remained impossible. The unanswered question was not how many died. It was how many learned something they could never unlearn. Nazino did not end civilization. It demonstrated its minimum requirements. Food, distance, permission to look away. When those were removed, everything else followed naturally. The island still sits in the river, unmarked, unvisited, grass covering ash, water carrying nothing that can be proven. History records Nazino as a failure of logistics. Those who lived through it knew better. It was a success of erasure, and it worked.